What's up, Jesse? Welcome to Dad Edge, man.
We did it. We
We
made it
did
happen. Technology can't stop us.
it. You know what? Technology can be very tricky. It can be moody. And you and I were going back and forth. The platform that I use to record, sometimes it works great. And then sometimes we have to abandon it and move on to Zoom. But it's
Yeah, yeah.
working today. So the stars are aligned, man. It's meant to be.
It's a good start. It's a good
It
start,
is.
man.
So, you know what? I really want to start with you being a kid. And you grew up in a very small town in Alaska.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
Pennock
and
Island. You ever heard of Pennock Island?
not until I researched you.
No one
Yeah.
has. No one has. Yeah, I grew up on this little island in Alaska called Pennock, and on the little island, it's about three-quarters of a mile long, maybe half a mile wide. A few homes, maybe a dozen homes, and then it's just woods and wild animals. So for us, there was no roads, no stores, no cars. So to get to school every day, or for my parents to get to work, we had to take a small boat. We call it a skiff up there, and take it across to town. So that was just like daily life. And when you're growing up and you're a kid, you don't know anything different. You think this is just totally normal. It wasn't until I got older and got out in the world a little bit, it's like, oh, that was kind of a unique upbringing. And the town, or to us, was like the big city where everything was literally one road going left, one road going right, four stoplights, about 15, 20 miles of road, and then a fence on either end. You were trapped there. There was nowhere to go. There was nothing to do. It was dark all the time. And to make it even better, Larry, there was 13 feet of rain every year. So 2 out of every 3 days, people in the Northwest and Seattle are like, it's rain and dark. And it's like, well, we get three times the amount of rain. Not that it's a competition.
My
So
God.
yeah, it was interesting, and for all of those factors and the darkness, you go to school, it'd be dark. You get out of school, it'd be dark. So for all of those reasons, there was a lot of problems with drugs and with alcohol and with depression and self-harm and all these different things. And for me, the thing wasn't those things as much as it was I felt like I was isolated, I was lonely, and I didn't have the opportunity to go and do the things that I wanted to do. And there was just one thing that I wanted to do. Ever since I was little, I looked up to my older brother and I wanted to be a basketball player. I wanted to go to college, I wanted to get a scholarship and eventually get paid to play basketball. And there was one big problem, and you can't see it here because I'm sitting down, but I was, basically born with the body of a hobbit. I was smaller than all the other kids my age, smaller than the guys, smaller than the girls. And, my nicknames were Baby J and Jimmy Neutron. I think it had something to do with how I styled my hair a little bit. But for all those reasons, people were very vocal telling me that I was not going to be a basketball player. And I had a couple experiences with some bullies that made it very clear that were a huge, like, impactful moment for me of like, oh, this is kind of like a defining moment. And I didn't really realize it till later, but it was a kid. We called him Storm and Norman. He was huge, and I jumped up to get this rebound at lunch at Shomar Middle School. And this kid, Storm and Norman, didn't even have to jump because he was so big, and he just snatched the ball away. And I was terrified. I didn't see him. I jumped back, and we locked eyes. And Storm and Norman, he looked down at me and he goes, "What are you going to be when you grow up? A pony rider?" And truthfully, I had no idea what it meant. But by the way he said it, I knew it wasn't a nice thing to say.
Right.
But I realized, oh, he's saying that I'm not even big enough to be a horse jockey. That the only thing is maybe I would be big enough to ride ponies. And so I had a decision in this moment, in this time, that I could choose to listen to what other people on the outside were going to tell me what I was going to do with my life, or I could say, you know what? The heck with that. I'm going to create the life that I want to live. I'm not going to be a victim. I'm going to get better in this situation, and I'm going to control my attitude. And that attitude is that I am going to become the absolute best basketball player I can become. And then I started down that journey. Did you ever see the Pistol, the Pete Maravich movie from back
Mm.
in the day, Pistol Pete?
I never even heard of it. No.
Dude, you got to watch it. Put it on the list. It's a classic. I don't even know where you would find it today. It was definitely shout out to VHS tapes, but it's basically him growing up in the sticks, Pistol Pete, as a kid, just carrying a basketball around everywhere. He was spinning it on his finger. He was walking on train tracks and dribbling it. He just was nuts for basketball. And that's what I patterned my whole world after. I was doing like the Alaska version of it. So it was like up and down ramps and on docks and in the snow. My dad would drive our Isuzu Trooper and we'd roll down the window and I'd try to dribble out the window while the car was moving. People thought I was legitimately crazy and they weren't entirely wrong. But I learned that lesson with Storm and Norman and with people throughout that if I wasted all my time worrying about what everyone else thought about me, that I would never get what I wanted out of my own life. And I
Mm.
think that's something we all fall prey to so often, not just kids, not just parents, just humans. Like we care so much about what other people think, but it can be so destructive when it comes to reaching our goals, whether they're big dreams like I was chasing with basketball, or just being happy, making one friend, being a better dad, being a better parent, being a better husband, you know? So that was the path forward for me. And through basketball, I was able to have a pretty good little career in high school and go on and get my education paid for in college. And then I was able to use basketball to break into entertainment and do commercials. My very first commercial was with Kobe Bryant for his new shoes. It was the Kobe Sixes. I got to put on his shoe, and then like the Black Mamba spirit took me over, and I got to run all through Los Angeles and dunk on little kids and grandmas and dominate everyone. And it led for me to do commercials and movies and TV shows. I got to have a supermodel Heidi Klum hand feed me cheeseburgers for a full day, which was a pretty awesome experience. Truthfully, I would have paid
What? Come
for
on,
that
man.
experience, but it was all again because of basketball opened the door for me to get my foot in there, and it led to yeah, I did a movie with Kevin Durant. I got to travel around the world and play with Allen Iverson, who was my idol growing up. I had his poster on my wall. I practiced his killer crossover, and that was kind of the first chapter of my life with basketball. And again, it's all coming back to attitude, in my opinion. What are you going to do when you hit those difficult times in your life? Whether it's a sport in a adversity and you feel like an underdog like me, like what are you going to do? Are you going to listen to other people and give up on your dream, or are you going to say, you know what, I'm going to turn this into my strength? I'm going to have basketball be the thing that changes my life and allows me to do things I would have never imagined I get to do. So I'm so thankful for my parents who I left out in that story, but were there for me all along the way and were teaching me lessons and were vulnerable enough to share their mistakes and encourage me, hey, go for it. We always have a couch here for you if you need a plan B. So, big gratefulness in my heart for that privilege of having two awesome parents that were in my life and told me, you know, I could do anything I put my mind to.
Man, that I've got so many questions that are
Yeah,
just
man, shoot.
swirling in my mind. First of all, yeah, I did a lot of homework on you, some due diligence, and I
Okay.
watched a couple of videos. And there was one video I saw where I don't even know what you did, but you somehow like dribbled and slid between some guy's legs on the other team, and then came out the other side and went right past him. I was like, I've never even seen anything like that. Like
Yeah,
that
yeah.
was wild, man.
But that's what we're talking about. What is my disadvantage in basketball? I'm smaller than everybody, right? So in my mind, how can I use that to be my advantage, right? So how okay, I'm lower to the ground. I could probably dribble better if I put in the work. I'm faster than most of these guys, or at least quicker. When they go to shoot, they got to bring the ball through my zone. I'm gonna have the quickest hands. You know, I'm gonna get on the speed bag so that I can take it. But and that's a perfect example of that is okay. How can I do this? And there was a guy in the street ball world in the and one days. I forget who it was, but I saw him do that one time. I'm like, oh, I gotta learn how
You
to do
got to
this.
do that.
And yeah, it's like if I could put the ball down and roll through it, as soon as that was actually at a game with Allen Iverson in Indonesia. I know exactly what clip you're talking about. And as soon as they switched and that big tall guy, I don't know, he's probably 6'7" or 6'8", got on me, I'm like, all right, here's the perfect opportunity to try to roll on the ball through his legs. And, you know, it's awesome when it works out in front of people because it doesn't always. But in the highlight film, you're going to see the one where it went really well. So I'm
Yeah,
glad,
yeah.
glad you liked that one.
Oh, it did, man. And guys, we'll have a link in the show notes for you guys, so you guys can go check this out. It is way too cool not to go check out. So, like I said, we'll put that in the show notes for you. But the question I have for you, so you mentioned, and this one you can answer quickly,
Yeah.
uh, but Alaska and where you were at, so you mentioned a lot of darkness, a lot of nighttime, right? Were you up in the area in Alaska where sunlight was only a few hours a day?
So I was actually in the most southern part, so it was the least extreme. And even then, it
Okay.
was go to school, get out of school, dark. Up in Anchorage, Fairbanks, the further north you go, yeah, it'll be like a month or two during the winter time that they won't get that daylight. And it's tough. It's definitely it's tough on you psychologically.
It's like 30 days a night, like the legit thing, right?
Yeah, yeah,
I can't even imagine. I can't
yeah,
even imagine.
yeah.
Yeah. Cause I know that like without, ample sunlight, we're not getting vitamin D and that will, cause, mental health issues usually. And, we do need sunlight. We need light. And I know that can be a huge challenge. You mentioned, you have one older brother.
Yeah, older brother and
Okay.
older sister.
Okay. So, and you had these amazing parents, right? And what was it about your parents that made them so amazing? And I really want you to intertwine your challenges growing up. And you were bullied. I was bullied as well.
Yeah,
And I got to tell you, like, you would have a lot of fun playing basketball with me. Like I am the extreme opposite of good at basketball.
yeah.
Like it's so bad that like my kids just laugh at me because like I cannot hit that hoop for the life of me. I don't know what it is. But
Hey,
anyway,
we each got our
what
thing, right?
that's
I hurt
right.
myself in
Yeah.
the shower the other day, so those playing days might be behind me when you're getting shower-related falling injuries. I
Oh
felt
my
like one of
God,
those
dude.
commercials. I've fallen and I can't
I
get up.
can't get up.
Yeah, this is what my life has come to.
Yeah. But explain to me what your parents were like growing up, and like I trust me, I get it. One of my kids is going through a bit of he's targeted, by bullies, and
Yeah,
we're dealing with that, and it's dude, it's gut wrenching for
brutal.
parents. It's brutal. I mean, it's brutal to be bullied, right? But it's also no one tells you how brutal it is as a parent that when your kid's getting bullied, right? And so for you, what was that like growing up? What was the response like?
Yeah, I'll give you a couple examples from each one. So the truth is, my parents were far from perfect, and the older I get, the more I realize, like, oh, like we're all just trying to figure this out. There is no rule book, there is no certified guidebook or test that everyone has to pass in order to be a parent, and they were just doing the best that they could. And it wasn't until I was probably in my early 20s that I realized that my mom wasn't just a mom. Like she was an actual person with her own like dreams and everything that she wanted to do with her life, and she sacrificed it to give me the best chance that I could to do the things that I wanted to do. So that's something that I feel like I could have done better. But early on, one of the things that my dad really leaned into is me being into sports. I was into baseball and soccer as well. Is it wasn't about my dad. It wasn't about his ego. It wasn't about the fact that he had played sports growing up and had had some success at like a high school level, and it was him fostering the thing that I was into. And I was just naturally drawn to those things. And so he would spend time. He would spend the time. One time I won a thing called the Elks Hoop Shoot Contest. You shoot 25 free throws, and I won it for the state of Alaska. And so you get the
How many did you
chance.
get?
I think like around 22. Eh, yeah, but
That's
I
crazy.
was like 10, I think, and I still had to jump. So there was like a lot of moving pieces. So in which I'll come full circle on that. But basically, from there you get to go to a regional, and if you win the regional, you go to the national competition, and you could get your name in the basketball Hall of Fame. So this was like my one shot in way that I was going to have a chance at this. So 1 month or two leading up to it, after I'd won state on one of the years, we shot 10,000 free throws in a month or two time span. We were shooting like
In a
250.
month or two?
Yeah, I
You
can't remember the exact, but we were shooting like around 250 to 500 a day. He would just go and he'd rebound for me for an hour and a half. And I ended up not winning, right? I ended up losing by one to a kid named Lucas Snodgrass. I need to find this guy, see what he's up to today. But I jumped and I landed on the line because I wasn't big enough to shoot without jumping. And I lost by one shot. So it was devastating at the time, but in hindsight, adversity, losing all and all these things are the best thing that can happen to you. And my dad, what he did is he built my trust by spending time with me doing the things that mattered to me. If I would have been
Mm.
into flying kites, my dad would have gone and done that with me. You know, it was him knowing the more I do this, I'm going to build that rapport, and then he is going to be comfortable opening up to me when the time is right to have conversations about tougher things. So that was one really awesome thing that my dad did right. And whether or not he knew that's what he was doing, I don't know, but he did get it right. And that was awesome. The other thing that was a huge thing and has become my whole mantra for life is attitude is everything. And how I learned that from my dad was 100% through sports. So we would go to the little league field, we'd go to the basketball games of the older kids, and we'd hone in on the best players. But we wouldn't watch the way that most people watch a game. We were watching to see what did that player do when things didn't go their way, when they struck out, when they made the error, when they made the bad pass and the ball went out of bounds. Did they blame the umpire? Did they blame the referee? Did they yell at their teammate and throw their arms up in the air and show them up? Did they hustle off the field? What did they do when times were tough? Because anyone can have a good attitude and be the man when things are going great. But what do you do in life when things
Hmm.
aren't going your way? Do you blame yourself? Do you hustle on and off the court or field? Do you high five your teammate? Do you encourage someone else? Do you take the blame even when it isn't your fault? And that taught me that's who you can see who is going to be successful, not only in sports, which are important at that age because you're so into it, but more importantly in life. And that's all I'd argue life is a constant cycle of going through ups and downs. And the people who handle the downs better and don't give up and don't blame other people and choose to have character, determination, grit, resilience, a good attitude, those are the people that go on to have a more happy, successful, and fulfilled life. So that would be a second awesome one that I learned from my dad through sports, which was pretty cool.
Do you think you'd be doing what you're doing today if it wasn't for him?
It's pretty cool because I get to go and talk about your attitude. And yeah, I definitely wouldn't be doing it today if it wasn't for him. I wouldn't have had the success that I had in sports, and then I wouldn't have been able to apply those to the bigger game life. So yeah, it
Yeah.
is pretty cool. I feel like I get to honor him every time I go and speak and share this message.
Now do you still, I mean, do you see your dad often? Is he still up in Alaska?
Yeah, so my dad is 77 years old, and he is in a tough season of his life right now. I'm still close by him. They snowbird and come to Arizona near where I am, and it's interesting because the dynamic has changed, and now it's almost like I'm the person that gets to be there and try to encourage him and impart these lessons that we've talked about our whole life, and some of the things that I think we'll talk about more of finding like your community. It's hard to have that community when you get older. You retire, you don't have that group that you've been around, those people that you've spent the majority of your life with, building families, all these things. And outside of that, you lose your friends. They pass away, and that's what happens with age. That's part of how these things go. And so you lose that tribe. And so that's been difficult. And so helping him find that in his life has been something that me and my brother and sister have been working diligently with him on.
That is super cool, man. I'm actually reading a book right now. It's fantastic. I'll hold it up here, and it really goes along with what you were talking about, which is Building a Non-Anxious Life by Dr. John Deloney.
Yeah.
Jo- he's he is one of four people that's going to be taking over Ramsey Solutions for Dave Ramsey. So it's him and three other people, but just a remarkable human being. He's coming on the podcast, but it's basically what he calls the six decisions of building a non-anxious life, and one of them is choose connection. And he talks about this situation, and quite frankly, I think all of us like fall into it to some degree. You know, in high school, in college, you know, we share that common ground as like human beings, right? We're all students, we're all doing sports, we're kind of all going through the same phase of life. Like there's a lot of common ground, so it's easy for us to make friends. Then we graduate college, if that's our thing. We go into the working world, we get married, especially when we have kids, and then all of a sudden our life, we're so disconnected from people except for our wives and our kids. So if we're not with family, we're working, and if we're not working, we're with family. somewhere along the line, like, and he talks about it in the book, which is, these people that I used to do life with, like my best of my best friends, right? Like suddenly, like our text messages are now, they're a month apart, they're 2 months apart, like it's every 3 months, and maybe it's just me sending you like a funny GIF, right? Like and uh, but we lose touch and we sort of seclude ourselves for some crazy reason. When in actuality, it's the people that are around us all the time, not just our family, but our peers. It's the people that you go watch your kids sports with. It's the people you see in the gym. It's people that are in the coffee shop. They're going through the exact same thing, which is like we hit these stages of life where we do more isolation than we do community, right? And I think it's awesome that you're reestablishing that within your dad. And the cool thing too is, if your dad taught you these lessons and you're able to reteach them back to him, what an incredible gift. My kids, I have 4 boys and I have 2 older ones. I have an 18-year-old and a 16-year-old. And when I get into a mental rut or something happens, they're like, Dad, do you not remember what you taught us about this? Like, do this, and do that. I'm like, oh my God, but
Yeah.
yeah, they are. But it's such a incredible gift, right? It's this beautiful, just symbiotic relationship, this synergistic relationship where we can help each other. And I think that's awesome you're doing that.
Yeah, it is I think it's just part of the cycle of life. And it is funny, just like you were saying there, sometimes things will come up and I'm like, you remember this is something you used to say to me like all the time. And it's like, oh no, I don't remember that. But it had such a big, profound impact that I still
Yeah.
remember, and think about it all the time. So you never know, those little things that you're saying, those little golden nuggets that you're dropping of what kind of impact and when they will actually kick in to someone who's listening.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that, man. I have a question for you that I
Yeah.
never thought I'd ask on a podcast, and I've
Okay.
never asked this of any guest,
Okay. I'm
and
nervous.
it's very, yeah, you should be.
Okay.
It's very personal.
Okay.
It's a very tough question, and I want you to be prepared for
Okay. I'm
it. Okay,
sitting
you
now. I'm
ready?
glad I'm sitting.
Okay.
I might need to grab a sip here.
All right. Ready? Yeah, me too. Okay, here we go. My
Glad you can
question
see
is
while I was
this,
drinking.
right?
Let's just
My
spit it
question is
out.
this. I would like for you to describe in detail what it was like Heidi Klum feeding you cheeseburgers for a day.
I
I never
was
thought
so
I'd ask
scared.
that.
I was so scared. It was
Really?
so early because this was early in it. So like the first one I did with Kobe, like I'm literally like trying to move cameras and lights around and they're like, what are you doing? Like, stop. We have 40 people here and they all like have a different job they're supposed to be doing. But I'm like, Alaska, I worked on a fishing boat. You got to hustle and everyone's contributing. You got to make every trip count. With her, I got to just like some fancy mansion in Beverly Hills. And you don't realize, like, in this thing, it's just me and her. It's the scene from The Graduate, right? Where
Oh
it's
my.
Heidi Klum, you're Mrs. Robinson. You're trying to seduce me, aren't you? And like, but you don't realize there's like 40 or 50 people there shining lights, holding things. I don't know what they're doing, mirrors. There was literally a person whose job was to just keep making the burgers look as amazing as possible. The burger was the star of the thing. It's the hero. And so they're burger after burger. So you think it's like, oh, just this thing where you're saying this couple lines, but no, it's dead quiet. Everyone's staring at you. And I've never done this really before. So I just have to say like a sentence and I say it and I just immediately have no confidence after. And everyone's like dead quiet. And I'm like, I don't know. Am I supposed to say it again? They must hate me. Like all of these things. But all of that to say, yeah, it was maybe the greatest day in the history of a working man's job. It was a lot of fun. She was super like kind and like she was giving out lotto tickets, scratchers to everybody on set. And yeah, I mean, it was, arguably the best day of my life. Not really, but it's fun to say that.
And how did this happen? Like, how did this even happen?
Well, I started booking commercials because of basketball. I would show up and they would literally be like, hey, I think you're at the wrong spot. This is like a basketball commercial.
Oh
And,
God.
and it's this little white guy. And then I'd go out and it was all these dudes that were like, 6'6", jumping over three people, dunking it through their legs, like literally ex NBA players. and then it'd be me, and I'd be like, "Oh, really? I'm here. I might as well go for it. Is it cool if I audition since I came all this way?" And they'd be kind of like annoyed, and then I'd go out there, and I would start doing all the tricks, and I'd have the shock factor. It was the white man can't jump,
Oh
effect,
my
or the
God,
professor,
dude.
as the kids would know now, of like, oh, no one expects the underdog. And I looked like a high school kid at the time because I was just, fresh out of college, and I got the baby face thing going on. So that got me a manager, got me that audition for that one, and they're just literally jamming a cheeseburger in my face. They're like, "Eat it sexy." I'm like, I don't know what that means. Like, what is that? What does that mean? And so yeah, they liked it, and I got the call when I left, and they're like, they loved it. It's gonna be with Denise Richards, I think is her name, or Heidi Klum. And I was like, either one sounds
Either one.
pretty good day. Wait, they'll
Yeah.
pay me for this? Yeah, they're gonna pay you. I'm like, you're sure? Yeah, this isn't a joke. Okay, cool. So yeah, that was a really fun one, and again, another learning experience. You kind of learn how it all works, and yeah, and you keep it moving.
That is wild, man. Like I said, I never thought I'd ask that on any podcast. So this is a
Yeah,
first. And I don't think I'll ever ask that question again.
yeah.
So I know.
And the other
I
question you probably want to know is probably about 50 to 80 takes of shoving it in my face. So that's how many cheeseburgers I'm spitting it out in like a can or whatever. So yeah, you just do it over and over again, which I wasn't complaining, but it was a lot of work. It was a lot of hard work that day.
is it hard for you to eat burgers to this day?
It's real. I actually never ate that burger. I remember it was like it has specific kind of sauce and like charbroil or something. I couldn't eat it just because I was like, it wasn't my
Yeah.
thing. And then just to have it over and over again, it's like, I think I'm good.
Yeah. I've had my lifetime fill of that burger.
Yeah.
Oh man. All right. So let's get back to it. So
Back on
I
track.
really want to talk about this. You know, we talked a lot about like not isolating, right? As human beings, right? And you have this you have a position, I would call it, and that's a, why parents should help their teens team up. I've got two teens, and I got one, well, he's 10, so I guess he's not really a tween yet, but he's gonna be there soon. What does it mean to team up when you're a teen?
Yeah. So let me give a quick context just so they're like, well, why is the Heidi Klum guy talking about kids and teaming up? So I got to go and have those experiences with Allen Iverson, and kids would line up for legitimately what seemed like miles and hours worth of coming up and wanting to interact with you. And they were mostly there because of Allen Iverson, but because I was there and I'd done some tricks in a game and gone through guys' legs like you saw, they were really excited. And even when we were in a country where they didn't speak the same language, I saw that kids were just desperate for attention from someone that they looked up to, a role model or a mentor. And what happened was we ended up going back to my little town, Little Ketchikan, Alaska, and doing a game there at the high school. And the same exact thing happened. Kids lined up and they opened up about all kinds of different things. And it hit me in just such a different way because I knew these kids' families and I identified with them because I grew up there. And so I had this just total light bulb moment, I call it, where it was like, okay, I'm going to do more than just entertain for an hour with a basketball. I could write a book, I could share my underdog story, I could start speaking and actually have an impact. So that's what I shifted my goal and dream within life from going to wanting to be an NBA basketball player, which I wasn't going to be able to do because I wasn't good enough, to, hey, I could still use basketball in a fun way to make a living, but then I can also have an impact or something that's bigger than myself. And so that led me to spend the last 10 years touring around speaking at middle schools, high schools, and youth organizations. And I've got to speak to over 1 million kids. I do the basketball tricks. I have an absolute blast. It's so much fun. And what happened is just by proxy of that, you start to have hundreds and hundreds of conversations with kids after these events and the parents, and you hear what's going on in their lives. And so the thing that I started to hear over and over again was mental health, whether that's depression, anxiety, loneliness, some of the bigger things where kids are showing you the cuts on their arms and the self-harm and that kind of thing. And so I didn't have to be some genius to be like, oh, I think that there's an issue going on with this. And so what we did, I have a really awesome team that helps me, and we dove into it really deep. And from all the research, all the data, everything that we could see was that if we could help it in the area of confidence, if we could help kids with self-esteem, then it would spill over into every other area of their life. So then I started taking calls from parents, and I did 2 years of about 10 to 15 calls with parents 5 days a week. And again, started to hear the same thing over and over again. And what I realized was that there is clearly an epidemic of loneliness. We all have these phones, and we're connected with people through social media and text messages and the internet and email. But kids have never felt more disconnected than they are right now. And so the best thing that, and it's not just kids, but while we're talking about kids, the best thing that you can do with your kids as a parent isn't necessarily go and see a therapist, which I'm not against that. And I think that there's a time and a place for that. But your kid might get better results out of going and trying out and making the football team, because now all of a sudden they have a group of people that have a similar passion that they get to spend time around in person, and they get to learn what it's like to be a friend. They get to learn what it's like when someone talks a little bit of smack to you and says something not nice, and learn how banter works and overcome social anxiety and navigate the waters of being a human instead of being isolated in your room scrolling endlessly on TikTok or Instagram or Snapchat or any of the things that they're on. Yes, that has its place. Yes, you can connect with people, but we're hardwired in our DNA to connect and have community and to have a tribe and to belong to something bigger than ourselves. And that's what's so beautiful about what you've done here with the Dad Edge is it takes a village. Like, you don't know everything it takes to be a perfect husband, to be a great dad, to be a good community member. I don't know it. No one does, but collectively we can share our experiences and we can come together. And that's one of the biggest things that kids are struggling with right now. And one of the biggest steps that we can do is get them to team up, find their club, find their sport, find their community that they can engage with in person, not through a screen. And that is going to dramatically change the trajectory of their life.
Wow, man. You're really hitting on, I think, a topic that parents need to know more about. And I just interviewed Steve Robertson, who he wrote the book Aliens Among Us. It was basically about not about aliens. It was about basically our kids and like Gen Z, and I think it's Gen Alpha, which is between the ages of 10 and 20, maybe. Crap, I can't. I don't know. I forget what Gen is what. But he gave some really interesting statistics that anyone under the age of 28, 35% of their communication is digital.
Yeah.
Here's the crazy thing for Gen Z, because of, and he thinks it has a lot to do with, devices and screens, and Gen Z is actually spending 40% less time with friends than generations before it. Like, and think about that for a second. Like, you don't have to like leave your bedroom to somewhat get the feeling that you're in community, but you're not, right? I mean, you are to some degree maybe, but like, even my 16-year-old, man, this one blows my mind. Like, my 16-year-old has like this group of friends, and they're great kids. They really, really are. They don't get into trouble. They're not into drugs. They're all into football. Like, they have community, but they actually prefer playing like a video game in their own homes on headsets, like, but together, right? And
Yeah.
I'm like, why don't y'all just sit next to each other? Oh, no, we don't do that. Like, we go to, and even my 16-year-old, he's more of an old soul, and he'll look at him and be like, why y'all, makes no sense. Like, let's just hang out together. Like, why y'all got to be in your own house on headsets when we can all be together? Like, and they just are like, well, it's not what we do. And he's just like, I don't understand. You know what I mean?
It's a different world, and I don't envy these kids today. The time that I grew up, the only reason that I was able to be able to dribble a basketball and do those tricks is because I spent 10
Right?
hours. If
Yes.
probably more. If I had this, it would have been a real hindrance, the phone, in getting that time in, because there's so many distractions. So I really feel like it's your competitive edge as a person, not just as a kid, but as an adult, of like, well, everyone's wasting their time mindlessly scrolling or looking at what other people are pretending that their life is, you could actually be putting it into doing something. But do you feel like when it comes to when you look at your kids and the life that they have compared to the life that you have, is it like they have it so easy and you're just scratching your head at some of these things that you're like, they need to toughen up? Or what is the lens that you kind of see? I'm just curious because that's something I've had to adjust and work on my end.
Man. So I'll answer. Thanks for the question, and I'll answer this. I think two different ways. So the same one I'm talking about, my 16-year-old. We're anything kind of like your dad, right?
Yeah.
Anything my kids want to do, and my wife has the same attitude. Anything they want to do, and they want us to be a part of it, whether we're interested in it or not, we'll get really interested really fast,
Yeah.
right? I don't care what it is. So lately, my 16-year-old is like, hey, he loves that show Stranger Things.
Yep.
And
Yep.
he was like, he's like, you guys haven't seen this yet. You should watch it. I'm like, he's like, well, what if we all three watch it together? I'm like, oh, I'll be all about that. Yeah, let's do that. So we're watching this and we're having these conversations now in real time about what it was like growing up in the 80s. Cause I was around those kids' ages around that time that they're portraying the series. And they're like, they can't, like my son will be like, they don't have cell phones. Like they have to be home for someone to call them. Like they go to an arcade, like together, like on Friday night. Like
Yeah.
he's like this. And my kids will actually tell me, they're like, that seems like it's so much more fun. I was like, it was. I was like, to be honest, man, like it was fun. In order for you to go out and have fun, you had to go out and have fun, like, or have people over to your house. You had to have physical human beings to be around in order to play, right? And now you just kind of don't.
Yeah.
And it's fascinating to me. But here's what I'll tell you. Like me, you like me, I was bullied growing up. And I will tell you this. This is where I think this generation has it much harder, because I would like watch the clock for the bell to ring and be like, in 45 minutes, I get to go home and no one will mess with me. Right.
Yeah.
But all you need now is a device of some sort, and that bullying never sleeps. You can be in your bedroom and you are being bullied. Right. So I think that there's like this relentless, I think, just there's constantly a set of eyes and ears on your life at all times if you want it to be, right? And I think that can get exhausting for kids, for anybody. At the same time, do I think, kids need to toughen up a bit? I mean, yeah, sure. I mean, I really do. I think there needs to be really distinct boundaries around like cell phone usage. Like my kids, like, the older two have phones, the younger two, of course, don't. But like, they have 1 hour of like screen time on that phone. And then it turns into either you can text or you can call. After that, there's nothing else you can do. You've got 1 hour and that's it. And that's because, you mentioned the 10,000 hours of basketball. Like, I love the fact that my boys will still to this day, they'll run up to the high school and they'll be like, hey, let's go throw the football.
Yeah.
With their friends. And I'm like, heck yeah, man. Like, go
Yeah.
do those things. Don't be in your room just scrolling TikTok. And all of a sudden you're like, oh my gosh, 2 hours went by. I didn't even know it. Right. But I think that there's truly connection that I think is being lost with this generation, that I think it would serve them tremendously just to be around other human beings, in person.
Yeah. Dude, I could totally confirm that. I'll go. I was at some place the other day and it was about like 10 to 15 different schools at one event, and I had them all hold up their phone. All right, let's look at your settings. How much time are you spending on average? And it is disgusting the amount of time. There was a kid that was like
What did they
23
say? Like, what?
hours the
What?
average. And so I'm like, are you sleeping with like
Sleeping?
YouTube videos playing? Or like, we need to get like a recalibrate this, but you shouldn't be doing that either. But I'm
Oh
so
my
glad
God.
that you have that screen time and have those systems, because just if a kid is left to his own devices, they aren't going to always choose the things like you're saying. Okay, like let's go connect, let's go throw the football around, let's actually hang out in person. And those are the things that are going to keep them healthy, happy, not depressed, excited about life. And it's so easy to hide behind a device. And I was asking you that question about like kind of what are you seeing? Because from all the conversations that I have with parents, I find a lot of times moms are very worried, very anxious, and very far one direction about like everything's going to hurt their kid. It's the end of the world. They're not going to make it. And dads tend to be like my dad, and how it sounds like you are, like, hey, it's going to be okay. You'll get through this. Tough enough. Walk it off. Oh, someone said something not nice to you. Yeah, that's life. You'll learn to navigate that. And I've had to work on being more empathetic of like, okay, yeah, maybe they do have it a lot easier than we did when we were growing up, but that's not their fault, right? It's not their fault that, they always have the perfect temperature and they're never too hot and never too cold. And maybe the biggest obstacle they're having to face is sometimes they go somewhere and there's no Wi-Fi or their phone doesn't have connection and it's like a meltdown. And we're like, hey, do you know how your grandparents had to come here from another country? They didn't speak the language. They had $5 and 10 kids, and they got through it. They got through this thing called the Great Depression, and you can't go 20 minutes without cell coverage. Like that's my initial response, and I've had to work on that. So that's why I was asking, because I feel like it tends to be somewhere in between mom, if it's that person in the relationship, and dad being like, hey, everything's fine, walk it off, of somewhere more in the middle of like, okay, let's have a balance and have that communication.
Definitely in the middle. And I'll tell you, so like with tech in our house, right? We just have rules, right? And one of them is if you have a phone, then there's going to be a screen time, and that screen time for your apps is going to be an hour, and you can spend that however you want. Whether that's if you want to scroll through. I mean, I remember all the, quite frankly, the dumbass like TV shows I used to watch growing up,
Yeah,
right? That probably like my mom or my grandfather was probably like, it's just a waste of your time
same
for crying
thing.
out loud,
Yeah,
right? You know
yeah,
what I mean?
same thing.
And but you also need, I think it's important to incorporate like some downtime, some entertainment, some like, you're watching something that isn't like, personal development or something like that. Just got to give the brain a bit of a break, right? And I'm okay with that. But I'm not going to like sacrifice that with like 23 hours a day or even like several hours a day, right? I think it's like, hey, when your screen time is up, let's go to the gym. When your screen time is up, let's go outside, right? When your screen time's up or before, like, let's go fishing, right? We fish in the family too.
Nice.
So I also think this too. I think, if you go to the extreme too much and you restrict your kids so much with devices, that I think will also impact their social interaction skills. Because if you look at the stats, like when I had Stephen Robertson on the podcast, and he's like, 40% of communication, I'm sorry, 38% of communication is digital now, then your kids are, quite frankly, like they are going to be left out, like and I'm not saying you go full throttle into that world, but I think it's important that they have some sort of tech that they can communicate with friends, and whether that be through a video game that they're all doing. Like I joke about it, like they're, but in a way that's how they bond. The biggest difference is like I played Nintendo sitting with four of my friends. They're playing a video game, but they're in their own house, but they're on headsets, so they're kind of like through tech sitting with their friends.
Yeah.
So if you don't allow that stuff, you're also not allowing your kids to be with their friends in that manner, whether we agree with it or not.
100%. Your job as a parent is to prepare them for the road ahead. It's not to run in front
Right.
of them on that road and try to smooth it out and get rid of all the bumps. No, you want them prepared. And in the real world, you have a phone. So if you don't, like you said, if you have zero access to it and you're 100% on the extreme side, well, what happens when they turn 18 or 21 or whatever age they're able to get away from you and your strictness? Is now all of a sudden they don't have that built in of knowing, because your kids are going to have the awesome ability to be like, you know what, I've done it this way for a long time, where I have more balance and I have boundaries and systems in place to honestly protect myself from myself, because any of us will get lost in that loop. We've all done it. And I know that I'm happier when I do it for a little bit, but then I get out and I connect with other people in different ways, in person, not through a device, and not being just locked in. But if they never have that experience, like we're saying, if you just keep it from them, then it's like, whoa, well, how does this work? And then they go full into it. It really is helping them come to that realization of like, I'm not doing this because I don't want you to be in the Snapchat group conversations with the other kids. I don't want you to be involved. It's because this is not healthy for you. I truly believe, I heard someone say this, and I was like, oh man, that's so good, that social media and the cell phone usage, particularly for kids, is going to be like cigarettes, where it's going to eventually come and be like, there's a Surgeon General warning that this is not good for the development of a teen brain. Because those kids that are on there, I think the average is like 8 hours a day for a teen. That you're like, that is literally a full 40-hour work week. And
Yeah.
then they're upset that they didn't make the sports team or they're not doing good in school. And it's like, okay, well, how much time did you practice outside of designated practice with your other teammates for this week, for this month? Well, not at all. Well, how do you think you're going to be starting? And how do you think you're going to be getting time at the end of the game if you don't go in and work hard? So yeah, the phone is definitely something that I've just become obsessed with because I'm seeing how it's having such a negative impact on so many people. And it starts with us as adults and our usage and how we're doing it in front of our kids.
I agree, man. You're catching me at a really interesting time. For the past several months, I've been using this device at home called the RO,
Okay.
and it's a box. It comes with an app. They're a partner of our platform and show, and then you literally just plug the phone in, and it measures your time completely and totally away from your phone. So it goes in this charging station sort of box, and then the app actually measures the time you're away from your phone. And my goal is to log 25 to 30 hours a week. So last week I had to report into my accountability group. I'm like, hey, I got 26 hours and 10 minutes last week in the past 7 days. And I'll tell you, man, like, and I say those things out loud and I don't force my kids to do it. And kind of interesting is that, a bunch of guys that I do life with in our community, they're like, well, don't you want your whole family to do that? I'm like, I want them to want to do it. I
Mm,
don't want to impose it. So like what I'll do is I will purposely be like, hey, it's 5 o'clock. I'm going to go put my phone, or I'll get my kid to do it. I'll be like, hey, can you go put my phone in the RO? So like they can like put my phone in and knowing like I'm going to be away from it. And then finally my 18-year-old just out of nowhere, man, he was just like, why do you do that? And I was like, oh man, it's great. I was like, I literally, I have no choice but to be fully present, like when I'm without my phone. And it's amazing, like how distracted I am with it. Like even if it's in my pocket, like it'll buzz or whatever. I was like, it's been awesome. I've noticed lower anxiety, less stress. Like, you know what? And the world doesn't come to an end like I thought it did, right? Like without my phone.
yeah.
And my son was like, I think I want to try that. I was like, awesome. I was like, we should. I was like, I'll tell you what, let's make it fun. I was like, we'll gamify it. I was like, you log your first 5 hours of RO time, just 1 hour Monday through Friday, and we'll go and we'll do something fun.
Mm,
And then I was like, you log 10, we'll do something else. You log 25, we'll start talking about other things, right?
yeah.
So like things like that just to incentivize him to get those reps in, and but also to be really reflective on what's happening in his life, like without that device.
I love it, man.
Um,
I love that.
Thanks.
I can totally relate. Like I maybe 4 or 5 years ago was like I gotta get off this thing.
Yeah.
I have to tone it down. And I went and unfollowed a bunch of people, and just said, okay, put up this parameter. This is how much time. Complete game changer. But even more importantly, it was an accountability thing. If I'm going to go talk and have all those kids hold up their phone and talk about screen time, then I want to be walking the walk in my own life. But the fact that I can go like, hey, like you said, I'm less stressed, less anxious. I'm not comparing myself to the people with millions of followers and TV shows and the people who are getting the things that I'm aspiring for and feeling bad about myself. Complete game changer. And the fact that you're getting them to do it on their own, this is like, so we have a program where we work with teens for 90 days. And basically, the question that is the cutoff of whether we can work with a kid or not is, does your kid want help? Are they open to outside
Yeah.
coaching and help? Because the parent, mom and dad, can want it all they want to help kid with anxiety, to help them with stress, to help them with bullies or fitting in. I can want it, as a coach. But if they don't just want it a little bit or are open to it, you're not going to get anything. So forcing it on them, like you're saying, like, hey, everyone, we're going dark on phones for the next few
We're
weeks,
going dark.
probably not going to be a positive outcome.
Right.
But getting them seeing you doing it and then looking up to you, beautiful, man. I love that.
Yeah, it's almost like we're going 30 days a night,
Yeah.
right? Like kind of like how you grew up.
What's going on?
Um,
Yeah, exactly.
we're Where I'd like to finish up here is you mentioned that there are 5 shifts that dads can make, in their kids' lives. What are those 5 shifts?
Yeah, so we were just talking about one of them. The first thing is it starts with you. It starts with you. It can't be, hey, do as I say, not as I do. Your kids are watching even when you don't think they are, and they are picking everything up. So you are just an amazing example in that story there of like, okay, I'm doing this for me, but I also am trying to be a great example for my kids to see like, hey, it's a better life when you're not plugged in on this thing and letting it run your life. So whatever that thing is, and even with these kids that we work with, so often I learn what's going on with the kid, and then we look at what's going on with mom and dad. And it's like, oh, that's where the stress is coming from. That's where the anxiety is coming from. That's where them being glued to their phone is from. So start with yourself. It's the best thing that you can do to have that impact. The second one is really helping them to learn to leverage failures strategically. So it's hard. Like you said, you shared something earlier about your son dealing with some bullying. Now, there's a level of that where you have to intervene and you have to get yourself involved. And there's a level of like, is this just teasing? Like there's different, barometer for this, right? But ultimately, your kids are going to fail. I can guarantee that we all do in life. But just much to what we were talking about earlier, you need to learn to navigate that as a kid and learn, like, you know what? I didn't make the team, but that's okay. Like, I could come back and try out next year. The world didn't end. Yes, maybe some people made fun of me, but life moves on. And we have kids today that are so crippled that they won't try anything. We had a girl just the other day in one of our groups, and she's like got a beautiful singing voice, but she stopped singing because she says she'll never be as good as Taylor Swift. So
Oh
she's
boy.
comparing herself to the most successful, famous singer in the world and being like, well, I'm never going to be that. So why even try? So lean into the failures. You want them to fail early. You want them to fail often. You're going to fail in your life. Use it as a learning tool, as an example, because that's how they're going to develop grit and resilience. That is so important. And it is a thing where parents are doing the best of intentions. Like, I don't want them to be sad and not have friends and at lunch be sitting alone, right? And so you intervene and you jump in and you do all these different things. But part of your job as a parent is to help them learn to navigate that. So when these failures come, not just to come in and rescue them, but to sit on it, have conversations. Okay, this didn't work out. You didn't get that grade. You didn't make the band. What can we do now? What can we do so this doesn't happen again? So leveraging failures is a big one too. You got any on either of those two things? I feel like you might have some input.
Well, first of all, I'm a big proponent of the first one, right? Which is, do the things that you want your kids to do. Don't do the things that you don't want them to get into, right? Is to be that example. But yeah, leveraging failure. I always like to ask my kids one question around failure every single day. And that is, what'd you fail at today? And what'd you learn, right? Or what were you challenged by today and how'd you overcome it? Because I want them to get really, really used to that word of failing. Because if you look at anybody successful, and you know this as well as I do, that people fail a lot. Like when I walk into the kids' schools, and speaking of basketball, there's this big poster of Michael Jordan.
Yeah.
And I'm going to butcher the numbers because I don't
Yeah.
remember the numbers. But it's like I have taken over so many thousands of shots and I've missed this many. And one I remember, he's like, I've been given the ball to make the game-winning shot, and I've missed it 26 times. And he's like, and then it goes on and on to say, I have failed more than I have succeeded, but because of, knowing that that's part of the process. It's the journey. It's part of who we are. It's one thing to fail and give up, or the worst. I always tell my kids this, and I love this example of Taylor Swift. It's worse to not try at all because you're not going to be Taylor Swift. What if you actually tried, and maybe you won't make it as big as Taylor Swift, but you make it. Or maybe even if you don't make it, you find something that you love. Like maybe it's being a musician or singing. Like, who cares if you made it big? If you love it, then just do it, right?
Yeah. Oh, I love it.
Yeah,
Yeah. No, and sometimes that becomes like the cool thing to not try. And that's so frustrating. And because
I
you're
agree.
looking at around and you're like, well, if I just don't try, then I'll never fail. But I'm 100% with you. The people that I know in my life, the people that I've been able to sit down with or research and study, the ones that have failed the most are the most successful, almost time and time
Yeah,
again. Yeah.
yeah,
I think for a lot of these kids today too, it's that back to that team up. It's finding something they're excited about, they're passionate, and going for it. So maybe it's sitting down and writing it down. Okay, what are things that I could try? Is it a sport? Okay, is it the cheerleading team? Is it the chess club? Is it youth group? Is it music? And then figure out, why do you want to be a part of that group? Because if you go in there and you're just like, oh, I guess I'll do this, but you don't have that why, then it isn't going to stick. And then I really feel you got to take action. You got to go for it, evaluate it. All right. Did I like this? Yeah, this is actually pretty cool. It is actually fun to go and play video games with this group in person. We all go to one house. We rotate whose house we go to each week and change it up. And there's a different level of camaraderie and friendship and connection. And then as a leader, I really preach to kids, then you got to reach out your hand and invite other people to do the same thing, because there's just as many people that were just in your position who are too afraid to put themselves out there. They're too afraid to go and be the singer, and they're looking at those people and comparing themselves to what they're seeing online. So that team up piece, and then the other one is with the phone stuff, setting up those systems. It's huge. If you don't set up some type of system for your kids and your kids don't have that, then you're just planning to fail. Without it, there's no person, I would argue, that has the self-control and the discipline to be able to just resist all the things that were built with millions and millions of dollars to just captivate your attention, hit your dopamine levels and all those things. I mean, we got people putting their phones in boxes and locking them away just to get away from them. That's how impossible it is. But you're gonna give it to a 14-year-old and be like, "Oh yeah, here, good luck." Like I can't even like handle it as an adult, but just run along and I'm sure you'll figure it out. So
yeah.
those systems are so important. And then the last shift is invest in mentors. Find mentors, whether that's someone at your church, whether that's someone at your boys and girls club, big brothers, big sisters. There's so many people that impacted my life that were just like older kids that were athletes at the local high school that have no idea how much of a difference they made in my life. But it's tough as a parent because you can know everything and you've had this front row seat at a master class with all these amazing people that have amazing degrees and books and all these things. But sometimes your kid just doesn't want to hear it from you, only because it's dad. Come on, dad. Like,
Hmm.
I know you're a hypocrite sometimes. You don't always do the right thing. But I know in my own life, I've had people who are like, I thought they were cool and they were on an NFL team or on a basketball team and they said something. And I'm like, oh, that's so genius. Genius. I love it. A huge impact. I call my mom and she's like, you dummy. I've told you that your whole life. What are you talking about? And I'm like, oh, I'm guilty of the very same thing. Sometimes I just don't
Sure.
want to hear it from the people that are close to me, whether it's mom and dad or other people in your family. So find an awesome tribe, not just for your kid, but also for you in life.
I agree, man. Life is much better lived in tribe and in community. It's a place you can go to unpack. It's also a place you can go to give. It's a place you can go to learn. It's a place you can go to teach, which is great. So, as we wrap up here, man, I just, number one, I so appreciate this conversation. This was so much fun. I could talk to you for hours,
Same, man.
and but I really want to make sure that if anyone wants to connect with you in the audience, what is the best way for them to connect with you? And I would also would like for you to add, what is it that you're looking to do? I know you do a ton of speaking, so maybe there's somebody out there that's listening to the podcast. I know we have a lot of educators in the audience that. If that's something that you want to do more of, or you're looking to do more of, like what's the best avenue for that? But the floor is yours, my friend.
Awesome, man. I appreciate it. Yeah, this was so fun. I could have these conversations. It's funny how my life has shifted from being so obsessed with one thing, basketball, and now it shifted to this other thing, and I'm just have the same like intensity and passion, but it's so much more fulfilling because in basketball it was all about me. You know, it was a team and winning, but it's like how far can I go? And this, when you do something that's bigger than yourself, it's just so much more fulfilling. So if anyone wants to learn more about what we're doing or me, the best place to go, we put it all on one site. It's theattitudeadvantage.com/welcome. So we have a Facebook group there. We have a podcast. You can book a call with me if you're having trouble with your teenager and you want just to talk and learn about what we're doing. I have the youth speaking. I go speak at about 4 schools around the country each month. We have a school program that schools do our SEL curriculum. It's all about imparting these life lessons to kids, and then we have our teen program where parents work with us and we work with families. It started off in the beginning working with kids, but then we learned like what we talk about. You got to work with the parents too. We're all in this together, and it's almost like going 3 steps forward and 2 steps back if they're going back to a household that is toxic or having issues. So we work together as a team, but theattitudeadvantage.com/welcome is the best place to have more information than you could ever need.
I just went. Oh, I went there before the show, but I went there again. It's a beautiful website, by the way, and it's very simple to navigate. We're gonna have a link for you guys in the show notes if you just want to connect with Jesse. Go to thedadedge.com/Friday152 for this show. Again, thedadedge.com/Friday152. Jesse, so many amazing things that we talked about today. Everything from, the top 5 shifts that we can make as dads. I took meticulous notes while we were going through this, along with, just your background is so fascinating to me, where you came from and how you turned what I would call adversity into monster success, and everything to Heidi Klum feeding you hamburgers. Like,
Yeah.
right. Like, where else can you have all those worlds collide into one interview, but right here?
Welcome to the Dad Edge.
I love it, man. Thank you so much for coming on, brother.
Appreciate it, man. Have a good one.
You bet. You too.